professional wrestling company he worked for. It was around the time of the territories, and he just, left us with so many moments that we still talk about as wrestling fans. And if you ever talk about wrestling icons, his name is always one that's thrown around as potentially one of the greatest of all time. Sure, he was never in really many WrestleMania main events, or he wasn't in many pay-per-view main events, but the thing was, he was just one of those names that always stood out. That one WrestleMania main event he got in 1985 in Madison Square Garden, teaming up with Paul Orndorff, bringing the two worlds together, professional wrestling and entertainment. This was defined as the one match, the first of its kind, that brought together both worlds of wrestling and entertainment, and it really started an era that's still going on today. And if not for that one match, we probably would have never seen both worlds of wrestling and entertainment be brought together in the way that they were. It's still disputed as one of the greatest WrestleMania main events and WrestleManias of all time, even though it's just one that Piper had a chance of headlining, and I believe he was one of the three main events at the follow-up WrestleMania and WrestleMania 2. I think in Chicago, the main event was actually Piper versus Mr. T in that boxing match classic. I could be wrong there on that analogy, but I go back to all the classical moments Piper has given us over the years. And also one thing that really stood out to me about Piper's personality was that he was just so friendly. He always answered fans' questions. He always wanted fans to be a part of his life. And he always took time out to do radio interviews, be a part of written columns, written interviews, whatever the case may have been. Piper always took time out to make everybody feel like he was a definite part of their lives and they were a part of his life likewise. And he also had a very close relationship with his family, especially his daughter, who just got back from England a couple of years ago. He was looking forward to spending time with her and his grandchildren. He got some time to do with that for the time that he had left. And apparently what happened, this is really tragic, what happened a couple of months ago, a difference of 5 months. I'm getting around to talking about it because so much came up with both professional wrestling and entertainment. I couldn't make time to talk about this. Don't ask me why, but apparently how this happened, apparently he was found dead in his hotel room. He suffered a heart attack in his sleep, and they found him there. And, it really got me down. It got me down and depressed because I was always a big fan of Roddy Piper. I was a close personal friend of Piper's. I used to call him every now and then to find out how things were going with his life and his professional wrestling career. He always took time out to talk to me. I remember all the conversations I used to have with Roddy Piper. It seemed like I knew him for all my lifetime. For the few conversations I had the privilege of actually sitting down with Roddy Piper and actually had the chance to go through with, he talked about some things going on in Newfoundland, how he was a really big fan of Stompin' Tom Connors in Nova Scotia, how he spent some time in Nova Scotia, loved touring Canada. In my opinion, Roddy Piper is one of those definite icons that really is labeled as one of the greatest of all time with professional wrestling and really put a definite label on this business. He is one of those characters that really defined psychology with professional wrestling, and he was just one of those exemplifiers of just how good of a psychologist he was with professional wrestling. I mean, very few of those people out there have a good label on what psychology really means to this business. Jake the Snake Roberts, who's another individual I had a chance to sit down with, one of the greatest psychologists in wrestling history, and if there ever was a second or third individual to recommend as one of the greatest psychologists of all time with wrestling, it's definitely Hot Rod Roddy Piper, because he was just so nuts. He was just so out there, and he was one of the more unpredictable characters in the wrestling business. You didn't know what this guy was going to do from 1 minute to the next, WWE, WCW, or TNA. You didn't know what he was going to do. He was a loose cannon. He was a switch that could be flipped at any given moment. And once that switch was flipped, he was so creative, and he had so much of an opportunity to create with so many great individuals. No matter if it was from Hulk Hogan to Shawn Michaels, he had a chance to create with some of the best in the wrestling business, and that's why I don't think that Roddy Piper's legacy is going to be forgotten anytime soon. 25 years from now, let me put it to you this way, 25 years from now, people are still going to be talking about Hot Rod Roddy Piper and all the matches and moments he gave us throughout his career, and that's why I think that his loss is one of the most difficult ones to have to rebound off of as a fan of this business, not as a radio show or columnist, but just as an everyday fan who follows this business. I think that everybody's going to remember Roddy Piper for the unbelievable individual he really was, and people are still talking about him as one of the biggest losses of 2015. If you were to tell me 10 years ago when Roddy Piper was really in his prime, showing up all the time on professional wrestling programs, no matter if it was on a live television show for WWE or on the independent level, if you were to tell me 10 years ago, 10 years from now, I'd be talking about Roddy Piper's death on my weekly column, on my YouTube channel at Jonathan Clarke 22, or from my radio show, I would respond to you by telling you you're absolutely nuts, and or retarded, because I would never have imagined that Roddy Piper would be dead in 2015. Also, earlier this year, can't forget about the loss of the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. Two big losses, two big icons, losing them a couple of months apart from one another in 2015. And this is really defining 2015 as a really unforgettable year. If there ever are stories profiled at the end of the year, by the time we do the year in review shows or we hear professional wrestling reviewing 2015, two of the biggest stories that should be profiled and shouldn't go without any acknowledgement are the deaths of Dusty Rhodes and Hot Rod Roddy Piper, for all the unforgettable moments they gave us throughout their wrestling careers. They are two legends, and two true legends who really can't be defined in just a few words. It would take me forever to talk about the legacies of Hot Rod Roddy Piper and the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, because in my opinion they are two of the greatest of all time, and two of the more difficult losses to have to deal with over the years of professional wrestling that I've been covering this business. And I tell you what, we've heard about so many deaths over the last at least 5 to 6 years. We're up to over 40 or 50 deaths in the professional wrestling business. It wouldn't surprise me at all if we were up to over 60 or 65 deaths, because it seems like more of this is happening and it's occurring more often in the professional wrestling business. And I wonder all the time, what is the real and definite reason for why this is always happening? Is it substance abuse? Is it just the stress of the business, or is it just the pressure that the promoters always put on these individuals to really bring out their best? I wonder all the time what it really is, and I don't think there's really a finger that can be, a definite factor that can be pointed at with a finger as to why this is actually happening. I think there are a lot of, different assumptions that people could make about why this is happening, but it makes you kind of wonder, what's really going on behind that proverbial closed door, and if we're ever going to get an answer as to why this is actually happening, if we're definitely going to be able to put a point with a finger on what's really happening out of all these great legends. Just last year, losing the Ultimate Warrior was one thing, but to go from losing the Ultimate Warrior, one of the more unprofessional individuals in the business, we kind of overlooked that because of his unprofessionality, but they still recognized him as an icon in this business and gave him his own statue in the WWE Hall of Fame, along with Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage. We kind of overlooked that because of his unprofessionality, but to go from losing the Ultimate Warrior all the way to Dusty Rhodes and someone like Hot Rod Roddy Piper, I mean, how many more icons do we have to go as far as to lose and put a cap on? In my opinion, you really can't define what these legends truly meant to the business. I think they would be proud of what the business has morphed into. Sometimes you got to question how some legends would really feel about what the business has amounted to, with the likes of John Cena and Randy Orton. But the thing is, for Hot Rod Roddy Piper, I think will be one of those individuals who wouldn't turn over in his grave and would be pleased with the state the business has been left in, with the likes of John Cena and Randy Orton carrying the torch that they lit and carried years ago for the last at least 25 through 30 years. One of the more memorable cameos I remember Hot Rod Roddy Piper making was actually back last year at WrestleMania 30, when all the individuals involved in the first ever WrestleMania main event made a cameo for about 2 to 3 minutes. They talked about the main event of WrestleMania 1, and they put it over in a parody. It was really fun seeing Roddy Piper appear there, and some of the appearances he would make onward before his death, prior to it, after WrestleMania 30, of course, with the memorable Piper's Pits with the likes of Randy Orton and John Cena, always putting over big things going on, and yet to have happened in professional wrestling. It's just amazing. But I think really, Hot Rod Roddy Piper, if you were ever to define his character and his career, it would definitely be a career-altering kind of career that really changed the business. And really, there's only one way of defining Roddy Piper, one of the true icons in the professional wrestling business who will be sadly missed. And as I said, 20, 25 years from now, we're still going to be talking about Hot Rod Roddy Piper. We're still going to be writing about him for written columns on the internet and professional wrestling magazines, because he is one of these legends that you just can't forget. And we've lost so many over the last at least 5 to 6 years, as just mentioned. It wouldn't surprise me at all if we were up to over 60 or 65 deaths, because it's happening more often. Just last year, losing the Ultimate Warrior, back in 2011, losing the likes of Macho Man Randy Savage, 2013, Paul Bearer. Just running through some random names here on the list. Where does the truck stop? I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. This time in 2016, next year, we'll be talking about someone else who tragically was found dead in the professional wrestling business, and that's a fact, because it never happens. It never stops happening. It always happens. We always go around in a circle now in professional wrestling with these deaths. And I'm not saying it because I'm an arrogant son of a bitch. I'm saying it because it's an actual fact. We're going around in a circle. Someone dies, we go around in a circle, and it's somebody else in the professional wrestling business. And I'm wondering why. I'm left in the proverbial dark with no switch to be flipped on as to why this is actually happening. And I'm trying to decipher why It's actually happening. And with all the years that I've been covering professional wrestling, I'm still trying to figure out why Chris Benoit would have went as far as what he did, why Owen Hart had to die the way he did, why the Ultimate Warrior and Macho Man Randy Savage had to die the way they did, why someone like Hot Rod Roddy Piper had to be one of the latest victims here in 2015 of death in professional wrestling. It's one of those things we can't seem to escape in professional wrestling, and I wonder why this has to happen all the time. But I know you fans will share with me in your moments and matches we have seen Roddy Piper compete in. I mentioned some of them here earlier on, like the match between himself and Shawn Michaels, the Wrestling Classic from WrestleMania 8, Bret Hart and Roddy Piper over the Intercontinental title, which Roddy Piper actually lost. Another great match that I remember, WrestleManias 1 and 2, of course, the tag team match, Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff taking on Hulk Hogan and Mr. T, the Boxing Match Classic, Roddy Piper and Mr. T from WrestleMania 2, one of the three main events of WrestleMania, which actually was headlined in 3 different states in the United States. It was amazing, seeing, Roddy Piper headline WrestleManias 1 and 2 and all the WrestleMania moments he gave us, like 1996, Goldust and Roddy Piper and the Hollywood Backlot Brawl. I mean, these are just some of the hundreds of moments, the thousands of moments that Roddy Piper gave us, whether they be on live television or on tour with WWE, and the things he did outside of the major level with the independent level also are things you can't forget. I know that a lot of people were throwing up photos and videos of themselves having the chance to work with him on the independent level. I know some independent wrestlers had the chance of throwing up some photos of themselves with Roddy Piper when they found out about his death as somewhat of a little tribute they were throwing together. And you fans also have thrown together some unbelievable tributes for Roddy Piper, some video footage you compiled, some signature logos you guys made with signs and different things like that, different graphics. You've thrown up on sites like YouTube and photo sharing websites as well. You guys deserve a tremendous amount of credit for not forgetting about the legacy of Hot Rod Roddy Piper. I can't thank you enough, and I think that the millions of wrestling fans will join in me in the tragic loss of Roddy Piper. It took me 5 months, and I do apologize to getting around to talking about Hot Rod Roddy Piper. I meant to do it sooner than what I did, but some things got in the way in my personal life and some things I had to talk about on this radio show. So hopefully you will share this video. You'll get this content out there on your Facebook page and your Twitter, on your Google+, however you choose to do it. I do appreciate it. You can also leave me your thoughts in the comments of this video at the bottom of it at Jonathan Clarke 22. Tweet me your opinion, hashtagging Roddy Piper's name is always appreciated at Jonathan Clarke 1. And you can give me your thoughts also on my Facebook page at HEW Entertainment. Roddy Piper, one of the biggest losses, one of the more difficult to rebound off of, but we're going to get past it, and we're going to do it as a family, because that's what the professional